Before we get started with the tutorial, I just wanted to show you the finished product in the viewport, and it has a hue saturation value slider, so we can just simply change the value with one thing like this to change the color. We can also slide this roughness. If we think it's a little bit too shiny, we can move that up a little bit, and we also have our bump down here to increase or decrease the amount of bump going on. Anyways, just wanted to show you the final result before we get started, so let's get into it. To get started, I assume you already have your leather model, or you'll just be using a sphere like me. So I've got a sphere in the center, and I just pointed a camera at it and up the focal length so that I could see it a little bit more clearly. Then we'll head over to the shading tab. I just have a 3D viewport set up on the side and a node set up right here. Then for the lighting, I'll go to rendered. I'm using cycles. You can also use Eevee. It looks good in both. But then you can just uncheck scene world. I'm using the built-in forest 3D lighting. Then with your sphere selected, you can go over here and press new and start making your leather material. I'm going to call this book leather, like so. And then now we'll start off by adding in the bump and sort of the texture of the wood, not the wood, the leather. Anyways, we'll hit Shift A and search for a Voronoi texture here. Then we're going to go and enable the Node Wrangler add-on if you haven't already. So just edit preferences, add-ons, and Node Wrangler, and check the box. Then with this selected, press Ctrl T, which will give us our mapping. Then we're going to take this object and move it into our vector here. Then if we Ctrl Shift and left click to preview this guy, we can see what's going on. We're going to switch this from F1 to distance to edge so that we sort of get a gradient going around the shape. Then we're going to simply up the scale on this guy all the way to a 40, like so. Bloom. Nice, because we want this to be a lot smaller. Then we're going to press Shift A to further tweak this a little bit. Oop, not a UV map. We're going to hit Shift A and search up a map range node. So search in range, and you've got this guy right here. Then on this guy, we're going to switch from maximum value to a 0.1. So we're just going to really bring in the contrast here so that it's a little bit flatter. Because we don't want it to be very pointy, because leather is not pointy. It's very flat, but it just has little bits that are raised. And then the in-betweens and stuff like that. Anyways, this to max value, we're going to switch to a 0.25 because we don't want there to be too much contrast coming out of here. So now that we've done that, we're just going to duplicate this 2 times. So I'm going to grab this and move it over here. Then with this selected, I'll press Ctrl Shift D, move it up, and then I'll press Shift R, and then I'll duplicate the action. Then to keep organized, I'm going to hold Shift and right click and drag over these 3 lines, which will group them into a little node thing here. Then I'm going to select all these. I'll hit G and grab them and move them down here. Then I'm going to hide all the map ranges by selecting them and pressing H on my keyboard just to stay cleaner. Then I'll preview this one with Ctrl Shift and left click. We're going to switch this one's scale to a 75. And then the one above it will switch to a 50 on the scale. And this is going to give us our 3 levels of detail in the bump and the texture of the leather. So then to combine these, it's not too complicated. We're just going to combine them with a noise texture. So we're going to hit Shift A, and then we'll search up a noise texture like this. Voila. Take our vector into here, and then we're going to stay organized. I'm going to grab these right here, and then move them just over here. Then I'll Ctrl Shift left click on this noise texture to preview it. I'm going to switch the scale here to a 10 to get it a little bit finer. The detail also to a 10. And then we'll press Shift A and search for another map range node here to further tweak this. And we're just going to be upping the contrast. So we're going to move this from minimum to a 0.4. We're going to bring our blacks up, and then we're going to move this black to the white to a 0.6, so to bring the whites in. So then we're going to hit Shift A, and we're going to search for a mix RGB node right here. We're going to take the result of this map range into color 1, and this one into color 2. Then we'll take our result of our noise texture map range into the factor here, and then we'll preview it with Ctrl Shift and left click, and we can see how these two are blending together. You can sort of see the bigger one here and then the smaller one in between, like so, and it's blending quite nicely. And we'll go ahead and check clamp on this just to make sure we're keeping our values between 0 and 1. Then all we have to do is blend our third guy into here. So we're going to press Shift A and search up another mix RGB here, like this, and then we're going to take this color into color 1, and then this color from the map range into color 2. And if we preview this guy, we can see this. And if we take our map range into the factor right now, we'll see that the biggest one sort of dominates the whole thing. And so we want to decrease its effect a little bit. So we'll hit Shift A and search up a math node here. We're going to switch this to subtract on the function, and then we're going to plug it in right here. And we're going to check clamp on this guy as well, so keep our values in between. And we're going to leave this on a 0.5. And so what that's doing is it's saying that we don't want as much of an effect happening, so it's not so dominant. Because if we take this to a 0, we can see the dominating big shapes. But if we take half of it away, we can see that it blends a lot more cleanly. Then we can go ahead and check clamp on this second mix node. And now it's finally ready to go into our bump. And we're also going to use it for the roughness. So we're going to press Shift A here. We're going to search for a bump node here, like this. Take our color into the height, like so. And then we're going to take a strength down to a 0.15. And then if we plug our normal in right now and then preview the shader, I'm going to go ahead and switch our color to something darker. This isn't going to be our final brown. Oops, not that color. But just so we can get a little preview, I'm going to pan the camera in a little bit closer here. We can see that it's a little bit too strong. And I think the contrast between the black and the white is a little bit too much here. If we zoom in really closely, you can see it. And it's such a stark bump. And it's not because of the strength here. It's actually because the colors outputting, they're so contrasty. So we're just going to hit Shift A. We'll search for a map range node, put it in between our bump and the mix RGB here. And we're going to take this to maximum value and simply move it down to a 0.25. And if we preview, currently we're previewing the mix RGB. And if we preview the map range, it sort of brings the colors in and makes it less contrast. So now if we preview the shader, we can see that it's a lot more subtle of an effect on everything. So then now all we have to do is factor this into the roughness and then give us our colors, and then we'll be done. So to do that, I'm just going to take this map range and press Control Shift D, duplicate him up here, and then I'll preview him. So for the roughness on leather, it's quite actually reflective, but it's not going to give you a clear image such as a polished metal or something like that would. So for this roughness on this map range, we're going to switch the minimum to a 0.15 here, and then the maximum to a 0.3. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it reflective, but not too reflective. So then we can preview our shader again. I'm actually going to move this over here because it got a little jumbled. And then move this result into our new roughness. As we can see here, it sort of starts to reflect a little bit. Now, you may think this is a little bit too much reflection. So if you do, you can always move the minimum value up to like a 0.2 or something. But at a 0.15, I think it's pretty good. And obviously, if you see this from a distance, it doesn't look nearly as reflective. It looks more something like a book or something like that. But yeah, I'm going to leave this at a 0.15. Oh, that's what it was at originally. I told you that you could move it to the same value. But yeah, you can move it up or down. And if you want to further adjust it, you can have a math node here. Check clamp, set the values to 0, and put it in between here. And then you can just increase the value by like a 0.1. And that will up the roughness. And then you can increase it again and up the roughness in this way, instead of having to do it manually in the map range here. So I'm just going to leave this here, and I'll set it to a 0 for now. And then now we'll move on to the color. And for the color, we're going to add a noise texture again. So Shift A, noise texture here. Take our vector into here. And then I'll preview this guy. We're going to switch the detail to a 12, just like that. Then we're going to factor this into a mix RGB, which is going to have our two colors for our leather. So I'm going to take this and move it into the factor here and make sure we're previewing our mix RGB. Then this color 1, I'll go ahead and give you a hex value. It is a 624 A2E. Again, that is a 624 A2E, like so. Then this color 2 is simply a 836 B51. Again, that has an 836 B51, like that. Now we have our leather color. Then we can just factor this into the color, like so. And then we can preview a final result. And we have our finished leather material. And we have a color adjustment. We can even hit Shift A and add a hue saturation node in between so that we can change the value of this manually. We can cut it in half if we want something darker, or leave it at 1 if we like the original. Change the hue, obviously. So before you go, I just wanted to show you some cool things you could do with it. I just threw some book models together real quick and threw them into the scene. I just simply tweaked these value on the hue saturation and got myself a red, and then upped this to a 0.1 to get myself that. And also, if you think this parchment paper is kind of cool, I have a tutorial for that, and it's already published and everything. You can go ahead and click that link. It's going to be on your screen about now, and it should be in the description as well. But yeah, anyways, you can create some really cool book models when you combine these together, and I just wanted to show you that before you go. Yeah, anyways, catch you in the next one.